ahead. And thank you for showing this to us today. Really cool.
Yeah, and I'm well aware that if you're not familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect, I'm well aware that I may be on the mountain of stupidity at this point, but you can look that up. So that being said, you should see a journal on the left and the Boulder Mail Trail actually in the background. There is a trail there, although it's hard to find. If you ever get the chance to hike that, it's a world-class hike. Anyway. So today, I just want to go over APIs. I'm going to go over a couple of slides to just kind of explain it. I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier before we started recording, but if you look at the dictionary definition, it's got all these like programmer words and applications and mentions software developers, and I just think that's really intimidating. Apis in Latin means bees. So to me, that makes me think of like an angry swarm of bees, and it's going to be really complicated and difficult. But in reality, APIs are just a way to get data from one place to another. And when I think about it that way, it seems more like a cute and easy type thing that we could handle. So the goal today is to turn APIs, if you think of them as an angry swarm of bees, into just, this is something we can manage. So that being said, I want to start with a little case study, and then we'll do a more complicated case study. And I just bought a truck a couple of weeks ago. But one thing that I was looking at was I wanted to be able to look up from the government, as Don mentioned. There is a database in the NHTSA. That's something about National Highway something. There's a there's a tool or a database that they have, and so you can use Jump and Jump scripting to go to the internet when I push that run button and go and get all the information about some random VIN number that I was interested in. I'm not sure if this is the one I ended up buying or not, but that's kind of cool. And so I want to show us how to do that. Let's take a walk through building this together. It first starts with the documentation, of course, that shows up on the other monitor. Again, this is a government website, and they have documentation for their API. And again, it might look a little intimidating with all of these sort of codes until you realize, like, you can click on one of these links and you get an example and you see, oh, wait a minute, this is just a website. This is just a URL, and it's got some question marks in it. There's a big hint for you that there's an API in use. Anytime you see a question mark when you're browsing the internet, there's probably an API in the background, but it's got this sort of the beginning section and an end section. And then all of this is just examples of the beginning section being that vpic.nhtsa.gov/API plus these things. And so that actually isn't too difficult once you realize that. I want to start by, let's do it with the GUI, like all things in Jump. If you're doing scripting, if you can do it in the GUI first, then quite often that makes it a little easier. So I'm just essentially taking this decode VIN and I've put it right here so we can look at it a little bit more. Make that go away. So here is what my URL needs to look like. And so I've got my first part, which I know from the website. It ends at that API section. And then I'm going to tack onto it this vehicles, decode VIN values, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the VIN number that I'm looking for. I'm going to tell it what format I want to use. In this case, I want to use CSV. Scott did ask earlier, does it matter which format I use? I find that if you're using the GUI, CSV files are more successful, but if you're doing scripting, it doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to tack on the year. And so what that means is if I've got this VIN number and this year, then I just need to kind of sploosh those together And when I do that, and I hit Control C on my keyboard to copy that into my clipboard, then it's one step. So if you're not doing scripting, it's really, really easy to get stuff from an API, assuming you can format that that URL very well. So then I hit Control V on my keyboard, I paste it in, I hit OK, and magically, here's that information, and it shows up. If that's all I care about, then I'm done. But of course, we want to complicate this a little bit more because we're a scripters club and we want to do this via scripting. Okay, so it's almost as easy as using the GUI. Here is a script to do it. Let me make that script, make my text just a little bit bigger so make sure everybody can see. Okay, so those same numbers, I'm gonna run this so I don't run into name collisions. I've got my VIN number. I'm going to store that in a variable. So I hit enter on my numeric pad to run that line, and I'm going to store the year. And then really, I'm just going to create this long URL as a string, right? Control M to reformat this. So one line right here, I'm going to create this request URL, which is kind of the beginning portion of it, plus the VIN. And I'm going to tell it that I want the format to be in JSON this time, and then the year at the end. So when I run that, I get this right here, which is, and essentially this is what we did before. That's what was in my clipboard. So I just put it back in my clipboard. I'm not sure why, but you might be tempted. Okay, I know why I did that. You might be tempted to just at this point hit open and then paste that in. And sometimes that works. So let me run that. And this time it worked, but it gave me some weird information. 20 minutes ago, I ran this and it pulled up a data table. So go figure, right? That's why we don't want to use open. I'm not exactly sure why one way or the other, but I know that this works 100% of the time. And so what I want to do is I want to tell Jump using this new HTTP request function to create and go get something from the internet. I used the Alt double click secret shortcut here to look at this. There are some examples on the scripting index as well, but it's really, really simple. You just tell it what the URL is. 99% of the time, it's going to be using the method get. The opposite would be post if you want to send information to an API. But when I run this, I get a string 12K back. And then what I need to do is I need to use this other feature, JSON to data table. So it comes back as a JSON file. And I just need to tell Jump, well, take that JSON file and make it into a data table. Hit enter, there you go. So it's just a few steps. And that's how you get data from any API source. So we can complicate this a little bit more. Sorry, let me pull this script up, and I'll show you the script versus the fancy version side by side here. So this is what we just did on the left. And to make a little application with a window is really just adding a few things. So, but it's the same thing. We're going to create a VIN number and a year, and that was just as a default. I'm going to make a new window with some text boxes, text edit boxes, and then a button that is going to create that URL, very similar to what we were doing before, that new HTTP request, and then put it into a data table. So when I run this, Control R, I could put any different VIN number or whatever I want, but I get that same information. So it's a really simple process to get information from an API. I think the hardest part is, honestly, it's learning what the API expects. Excuse me. Okay, is learning what the API expects, and that's usually found just on the website's API examples. Okay, so let's do maybe another slightly more complicated example, and we'll talk about maybe completing a table. So here I have a list of cities and their states, and what I want is the zip code, latitude, and longitude. What I really want is the zip code, but it'd be nice to have those two. So I went to Google, and you see that I looked through a few of them. Some of them are like, I don't know, the USPS one, like all things sort of governmenty, it seemed really like it took a long time to understand. I settled on this one called Zippopotamus, and it's largely because its welcome page gave me exactly what I wanted. And you know, and if I'm being honest, because of the word Zippopotamus, that just seemed fun. Anyway, it was really easy for me to see, oh, if I have a city and a zip and I want to get to a zip code, then I just tell it, here's the URL for it. And that's easy. So maybe I could even just test this by copying and pasting into a new window. Yep, that looks an awful lot like a JSON file of Belmont, Massachusetts. Okay, so that's easy, right? I've copied and pasted that over here. So I've got an example and a simple script. It's going to be the same as before. To use the Zippopotamus is, I'm going to take my base URL. I'm going to add the state and a slash and the city because I want to get that basically to look like this example. So I'm going to run that. I've got my base URL. I've got my, oops, probably should have hit that names default to here. Okay, base URL, my state, and my city. And now I can create this request URL by just concatenating all of those. And that looks pretty similar to me, to this example over here. So it's time to run it. And I'm going to run this. And it's, yes, I get some gobbledygook back that looks like a JSON file to me. And I just tell Jump, yeah, put that in a data table. Done. Very, very easy. The next up is, if I want to actually do something useful with that, I'm going to make it maybe loop through each row in this table. And so to do that, it's going to be basically the same with a few changes, right? So first I need to tell Jump which data table I'm using. I've got my base URL. That this should be very easy for us. I'm going to give the user some feedback because this might take a while using the caption thing. I'm a big fan of caption. But then I'm just going to say for each row in this city's data table, I'm going to create, now I cheated here. Instead of making a base URL as a separate line, I'm just kind of moving it all into one. But here is that URL. And one thing to be wary of is on the internet, URLs don't like spaces. So if you have a space up top, that usually breaks everything. So if this was 2 words Belmont, you might already know this, but space is %20 in internet URL language. Anyway, that being said, all I'm doing here is saying, hey, take that city, and if it has a space in it, replace it with that %20. Same thing. So we're going to go and we're going to get it. We're going to put it into a data table. And I'm sure there are lots of ways to parse that JSON file without putting it into a data table that would make this much faster. I don't really care. I'm kind of a brute force guy. And then I'm just going to try, if something comes back, I'm going to get from that data table the latitude, longitude, and zip, close the temporary data table that I don't need anymore, and then populate my main data table. And if for some reason it just doesn't work, I'm going to skip it. I don't care. I'm going to update the user a little bit with how we're doing based on what row we're on out of the total rows. And when we're done, I'll throw up I'll shout hallelujah and be done. So that being said, I'm gonna run this. Control R. Oh, I probably should have. Well, you can see that it's working. Looks like we skipped one. It finished. Yeah. So Galveston. Why didn't that work? I've been to Galveston. I don't know if anybody calls it Galveston TC. I don't even know what TC stands for. So I'm gonna delete that. Data cleanup is always important. You should do that before you run all your scripts. But that being said, let's run this script again. And once we get to row 18, it should populate that. Yeah, it looks like it did. There you go. I mean, that's hopefully I've made this into a really easy problem to solve and not a, oh my word, difficult one. Got a challenge for you, and I believe I can post this journal into the chat. If not, we'll figure out how to get it to you. But there's another API available on the internet called randomuser.me. And so the challenge is really simple. See if you can download data for 500 fake sample users. The API documentation is right here. And you might look at this and say, I don't know anything about Ajax. I don't know what we're talking about. Well, just scroll down a little bit and you can see things like requesting multiple users. Oh, I know how to do this. I've been keyed into, when I see a question mark, that means this is how to format it. So if I wanted to get 500 results, I guess I'm walking you through it a little bit too much. You know what to do. If you do get stuck, I put the script in there to do that. And then also, that
might be a good spot to answer this question.
Yeah.
Mikhail had a question. What if the city has more than one zip code?
I like that question. If the city has more than one zip code, I'm ignoring it. I'm just taking the first one.
I see.
Yeah. There could be other ways to do that. I could put all of them by matching instead of brute force updating the rows. So instead of for each row, and then updating the row, I could for each row get the cities and then use the tables match. Not match. Why am I thinking match? Update. Use the update function in JMP to pull the information from that new table into it, and I believe that would create multiples of it.
Okay.
Thanks for asking that question. Yeah, so I've got this APIs list, not B's list, but APIs list. Lots of different things. So I mean, you can mess around with quite a few things. I guess there's weather. I tend to just, when I'm looking at these, choose either free or open source because, well, I'm cheap. But yeah, so maybe I could look at, for my next adventure in the desert, I don't want to die from dehydration. Maybe I can find places where there has been rain recently. Yeah. Anyway, any other questions, Scott? You see showing up?
Mikhail had another question. Why not put all the attempts into a list of tables, concatenate them, and then update your data table with concatenated table?
Totally, that would totally work as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Lots of ways to get at it. I guess the question would be, what's the most efficient way? You know, then if you're pulling a lot of data, it might matter. But not pulling a lot of data might not matter.
I think the most efficient way is to skip the to skip this. Instead of, because putting it into a data table is just, I mean, if we're talking about you've got like 5,000 of these to do, that's going to add a lot of time to it. You should just parse the actual S. So when we look at this, of course, when I ran it, a JSON file is just a list of lists. And we know how to deal with lists of lists. So you would look at that and you would say, instead of putting it into a data table and then pulling it out, which is slow, you would say something like lat equals that list, whatever the subscript is of the list of the lists of the lists that returns. That would be much faster.
Okay.
But again, I like brute force. I don't mind waiting when the script is doing something for me. If I can, if it's doing what I'm understanding, yeah, it's always nice to go grab a beverage while if it takes a while.
All right. Not seeing other questions, but you're open to take any questions online?
Yeah.
Off mute. Okay. I'll just say this brings up an idea for me that and a lot of times when I was capturing data, I did not I would do everything I could to get the source data in, and then I would have to do quite a bit of cleanup to get what I wanted. And I'm seeing here, I could have been smarter about how I drew it out of that data source by using the API functionality. It looks, I guess the idea would save me a lot of processing time on the back end.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, someone had a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask something. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So years and years ago, I played with a Twitter API trying to draw down some tweet data. And I remember it being a little bit of a hassle getting the credentials. There was an API key to deal with. I'm wondering if you've had any experience with those or had any advice for us about how to deal with, when you have to deal with an API key.
I've had experience with those, and yes, it was complicated. Prior to 3 days ago, I would have said, pull up the instructions. Let's say Strava, for example. It will say things like, you need to do an API request to get this, to get a key, and then you need to send this key. Just follow those using this command and get them. However, I just noticed that, and what it uses is this thing called open authorization. I just noticed that JSL has these functions for doing that. So I don't have experience using these functions yet, but my guess is that frustration that you and I experienced was probably because we didn't know about these. And so these will help you get those tokens and keys a little bit faster.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. All right. Any other questions, challenges? Does it inspire anybody? I might actually get your help, Jed, to go hit some NOAA data. I've threatened to go after the tornadoes again on the tornado alley, on whether the tornado alley is shifting, because I couldn't prove it conclusively. So I was thinking of going at it now that more data's been accumulated.
Yeah. Yeah. Not just Scott, for anybody. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. The worst I can do is say, yeah, I don't know. Boy, I really killed the conversation there.
Yeah,
I don't know. We don't want to end on that, do we?
I think they're so blown away. I think this is great. Very, very, very applicable.
Yeah.
That's a word. Is that a word? I think so. Very applied.
Yeah.
To getting data easily via scripting. I really think we can do a better job by using APIs. So I understand better now why everybody was really hot for them, even on the enterprise side.
Yeah.
Very cool. I will see if there's not a question.
I see one question.
Okay.
From
Go ahead.
Mikhail. Any APIs not to internet data, but local data sources? I maybe I'm not understanding the question, but if I'm thinking, like some data source on your intranet, I think it would be the same because they're going to be accessed via a URL. But
I mean,
go ahead.
Not on intranet or intranet. I mean something on your local machine, like maybe list of events, user information. I'm sure like Windows or other operation system has a lot of APIs,
yes,
with like a lot of data sources.
Okay.
I know that we can access some of it. Let's say we can access environmental variables. We can access a lot of things like usernames, like path environment, etc. But anything else that we can access, something like.
Yeah, and so I think what you were mentioning of the there are some commands in JSL to get environment variables, and so you could actually, I think I have this somewhere. I don't know where. It's probably in my folder of things. Oh, there we go. Get all environment variables. So I went and Googled at one point in my life, what are all the environment variables that you can get? So basically, this is just creating a table with all of those copied and pasted in, and then, excuse me, creating an output column, and then telling Jump to say, hey, for each of those, go get that environment variable. So you can see all sorts of stuff about my computer that way. So that would be one way. And I can paste this in the chat.
Another thing, we can, for instance, we can work with Python, we can work with R, we can.
Yes.
I don't know if we can work with .NET, but let's say like this low DLL and something. Yeah, let's say I wrote some piece of software that does something with data, and I just want to interface with Jump. That would be something to use, right?
Yeah, if it has a dynamic link library and it's documented and you can find those documents and use them, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit scared to just go peeking and poking into something in the System32 library, just because, I mean, you could call something you wouldn't want to. And then you mentioned other languages. There was something else I wanted to show.
For instance, we have proprietary software that deals with our proprietary data, and we have some DLLs that I can call from .NET, even from PowerShell script, right? But it would be nice to directly get that data from, or use methods to parse data, etc., directly from JumpScript.
Yeah.
Not doing that somewhere, then exporting it, then importing that to Jump, etc.
Yes, you totally can. And you mentioned .NET as well. So not only can you script in Python I guess this is the same in Jump or Python, but trust me, that's Python. You can script in Python or R in Jump, but I think this is something that not a lot of people know. If you go to the sample data folder and then go up a directory, there's a lot of other sample things that Jump ships with, one of which is this automation folder. And so if you have visualbasic.net, yep, there are a ton of examples of how to interact. So not from Jump to something else, but from Visual Basic to Jump. So you can get things back and forth. I don't have any experience with this. I just think it's one of those things on my list eventually to do.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Okay.
So looking at this, boy, it's been forever since I've done anything with Visual Basic. So.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for Jed on the REST APIs?
We got to ask Scott these questions.
I had a question with your, I think one of your first examples with your bringing the VIN number of your truck. The data looked quite messy.
Yes.
I don't know if it's unformatted, or do you have any remarks or tips on working with that kind of data once it's brought in like that?
Yeah, let me just run this. And it's going to be different for everybody and every source, what I've found. Sometimes it comes in and it's really smooth and nice, but it's consistent from source to source, if that makes sense. So within a source, it's always going to be the same. So if I really cared about cleaning it up, I could just I'm going to record myself deleting these 3 columns and then selecting all of my blanks and deleting them, and then could put this to a script window and then copy paste it to the end of my script. Maybe adjust it a little bit in terms of making sure that it's not referring to some weird data table. Is that getting at what you're saying? So I could add things to it to make it clean things up much better.
You know how when you're exporting XML, you can use some GUI to parse different fields differently. Do you have something like that for JSON? Because then you can then you could take that script and just parse your JSON using that script.
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me do this. We've got this. Where is this? Results. I'm not sure if there is a JSON, unless somebody else on the call knows. I'm not sure if there's a JSON, wizard, but let's create a JSON file. Okay, so we've got that. Save text file. I call it T. Throw that on my desktop. Okay, so now on my desktop, I should have a JSON file. I drag it to Jump, what happens? Looks like it just opened it and even did it a little bit weirder than I was expecting.
think you have to go through open menu.
Okay.
And then you might choose like use GUI or something. Yeah, like using preview.
Data, text in a script.
Yeah, it's selected using preview. Yeah.
Oh, so there is one. Okay.
So
I love
here
that.
you can format to get you like more or less meaningful data table, and then get script out of that, and then just use that script on the JSON that you receive.
Yeah, very nice.
Cool.
Like that.
All right. Okay, any last questions? If Jason, if you're still on, do you want to talk about the topic that's going to be at our next Scripters Club in November, I believe, right?
November. Yeah, say a couple of words about it. We are going to dive into the Matrix. It's going to be fun. I'll be Morpheus, your guide. But maybe I could just do a quick audience poll and maybe raise your hand if you've leveraged Matrix capabilities in data analysis in any type of software or programming language. So Jordan, yeah, couple of people. One of the things that's really cool about working with data in memory in matrix form is that you can do a surprising amount of data manipulation, data cleaning, and even processing data without consuming a lot of memory. So there are really cool things you can do programmatically, but you can also do even some common tasks much faster if you work in a matrix environment. So we're going to explore that. I've got a couple fun, simple examples of, how to get information out of data in matrix form, identifying, locating, using indexing into a matrix with another matrix. So should be fun.
All right. I'm looking forward to that. Sounds good. So be looking for that to get added to the list of upcoming topics, the list of upcoming sessions, and we'll definitely get emails out to everybody, I believe. But thank you so much for this great presentation, Jed. I learned a lot. And I'm excited to try some stuff now. And Robin put in the link for our next, or where everything's housed, right? Where you can sign up for our next event in 2 months, as well as any of the European events that are going on, or you just watch those recordings, as well as get a recording of what we just showed today. So you can do some just in time when you get stuck and you're needing it. And go let your system engineer know if you want to, try something on applied work, and we can help you out with those scripts.
And I tried dropping the journal that I used into the chat, but it doesn't seem to like that. So I'll find a way to post it on the community, and then.
Oh, very nice.
Then, yeah.
So just share the journal as well.
Yeah.
I look forward to hacking your code. So thank you.
Well, you can hack my hack.
I'll hack your hack.
Nice. All right. Well, I think we'll drop off till the next session, and everybody just go and have fun with jump scripting, and have a good rest of your day and an even better weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.